Welcome to Hashknife Hangouts. I'm Calen Carpenter. With me is my partner, co-host, and father, Brandon. But before we get started, as always, for those of you on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe. Facebook, like, comment, and share. Find us on Instagram at Hashknife Ranch. Hashknife.ranch.mt, all lowercase. And if you're interested at what's going through my head, find me on Twitter at HashKnifeKid. And of course, spread the word to your friends and to the opening notes. So last week I created these topic notes while I was looking through information about the recent executive order from President Biden to assist with the competition of the various industries that we covered in last week's episode. What I found in the White House fact sheet was really disappointing. And instead of laying out facts, there were comments in there that laid blame for failures at the feet of the previous administration and further stated that the current economy is, in fact, booming. I think neither of those propaganda-laced statements are completely accurate. As a .gov site, you should be laying out straight facts and nothing else. If there is to be a statement that is wholly opinion-based, there needs to be a plethora of information immediately following that sentence to illustrate the White House's position. Moving on, though, why do I bring back these issues that we already discussed last week? Well, because in fact, everyone is struggling right now, specifically in agriculture. How? You might be asking. Well, I'll start with this. We're about to lose it all and ultimately liquidate the entire herd. Is that what's going to happen? I don't know. The answer is to be determined, because it's very possible. If you are watching this right now, you're looking at the faces of small town rural America where agriculture producers are losing every year. The fact is, the economy is not booming in our place within the nation. We have people struggling daily to keep animals cared for and kept safe. Currently, fuel prices have made everything far more expensive to operate in general. Because of that, hay is costing more, and to add insult to injury, Mother Nature decided to cast her vote this year and laid upon a large portion of our country a massive drought, resulting in minimal crops for winter feeding and a tinderbox of a countryside for wildfires. Men like my brother are working day in and day out to save homes, livelihoods, and lives to preserve what little is left right now in the Northwest United States. So why do I say we might lose? Because my parents have worked over the past 15 years to rebuild our entire cattle herd, and now they're looking at liquidating the entire thing as a potential option. Why? Because prices at the pump are skyrocketing, resulting in higher and higher operating costs. Hay's doubling, and hauling that hay is becoming even more expensive than before. All of this is happening while cattle prices continue to crash. The recent Senate hearings provided some great examples of what is going on in the cattle business right now. The cattlemen who testified stated that the market is in a cycle, and we accept this. But as more small guys like us get pushed out of the cycle, it becomes more and more extreme each time. This means the highs get higher and the lows get lower. So who's paying for it now? Us. Who will pay for it when there are only 4 producers? The consumer, which frankly you're already doing, you just don't know it. We have the attention of Congress for the moment and the people right now, but with our society growing an ever shorter attention span, how long will we keep the spotlight is really the question. So since those comments that I made last week, Dad has gotten some updates over this past week, the past 5-6 days, which he'll share, but it comes at a high price. So with that, I will turn it over to him.
Yeah, a couple comments on that. You started out talking about the White House fact sheet, and I don't care what administration you're in, they always want to make themselves look good.
Yeah.
And that they're trying to fix something that a previous administration did. And I don't care. They both sides of the aisle do that.
Yeah.
You have to look through that. And you're right. I don't care if there is one opinion in a fact sheet, it is no longer a fact sheet.
Yeah.
I mean, so but people don't think critically about that. They just, if this is your champion that's in the administration, man, you're going to just grab whatever fact or propaganda and run with that. Oh yeah, this is the way it is. And both sides do that. I get equally frustrated no matter who's in there, because I want facts. I don't want your opinions.
Yeah. And just to make it short, the real issue I had with it was they said that the economy is booming when I just laid out the reasons it's not. There might be economically, there's probably higher incomes for businesses and stuff like that that are making money off the consumer, but what is being failed to properly be explained from the White House is that the consumer, the everyday citizen, is suffering. So it might be booming on the business sector for most businesses, but for the consumer, it's not. So that's what my biggest issue was.
Well, it looks like it's booming on one end.
Yeah.
If you're getting more income or more dollars, and it's really, you got to look at it as numbers, right?
Yeah.
Because we're such a digital age. What they're not saying, and they just had to come out with this last week, what has inflation done? 5.4% inflation, which is unbelievably high. That is, now your dollar is worth less. So you're having to spend more with a less powerful dollar. So you're getting hit on both ends of that.
Well, and to bring it back to beef, that means you've been spending exorbitant amounts of money the last couple of years in beef at the supermarket, and now with inflation, you're gonna have to be paying even more on top of that when you may not be making the most amount of money that you could be making because COVID had its say in the last 12 months.
Well, it wasn't COVID that had to say, it's how we responded to it. Never forget that.
Yeah, no, sir.
And I'll kind of just, since we're talking about inflation a little bit, every day I've been on the phone, and your mother's been on the phone, and I know you've been doing some tracking and searching for hay.
Yeah, in my own little weird way. Yeah.
Yeah, in your own little weird way in San Antonio, but it's helped. What's gone on or what's happened is, and this is cyclic. I mean, you want to call it climate change, that, oh my God, this is the end. If you look across the United States, every year some area gets hit with higher than normal temperatures and less water. That's kind of the definition of drought. And when you're in the spot like we are, where it was little rain, so you didn't have a lot of growth, and then high heat, so that it stunts the growth of what plants have gotten some water, then you have a grasshopper infestation, is what we've experienced. You've got no hay, you've got no water, you've got no grass. So this happens all over the U.S. and we've talked about this. So we feel bad for people. I mean, you really feel for them in different parts of the country that are going through that, because you know what? Someday that's going to be us. Well, guess what? Here we are. This is us. And so I'm spending time.
And to make that point, I've said it before, but I think it's pertinent to say it again. There's a scene in The Ranch on Netflix. If anybody sees, it's got Sam Elliott, Ashton Kutcher, and there's a year where they're about to lose all of it, and then by some miracle something happens and somebody loses like all their cows or something like that, and they end up getting top dollar for their beef to make it to another year. That's what happens all the time, and we know that. What the lesson is that somebody's going to suffer for you to be able to make it through, and it's hard. You feel for them, but at the same time, your priority is with you.
And you have to understand that you've got to take care of yourselves first.
Yeah,
I get that. Let me back up about the inflation issue. I contacted one of dozens. I mean, we're literally spending several hours a day on the phone or on the internet, which is a good thing, a good use for the internet. You can get a lot of powerful, useful things done that way. And we're all three spending a lot of time. Like, as you said, your brother's fighting fire, wildlands fires. He's working 12 hours a day at least when they're on fire at 16s. Trying to keep this stuff suppressed a little bit for the one more devastation that comes through and can knock somebody out of. Well, it can ruin their entire house, property, cattle, horses, whatever they've got. It can wipe them out totally with one last big bang from Mother Nature. So I contacted one individual that's really actually fairly close to home. He's been raising hay for a number of years. That's kind of what he does. And I said, I'm looking for a couple 100 ton. And really, for us to get through this, we need, because we're gonna have to start feeding early, as I mentioned last time. We may be starting here soon. In order to save all of our cattle, if we can, I'm looking at about 400 ton of hay. I've got the horse hay in from last year. We had good hay. We've kept it well. We've stacked it right. And we didn't really stack it. We laid it and preserved it right. So I'm not so worried about horses. our horse herd and the horse end of the business. I'm worried about the cattle. And 400 ton will get us through. Well, normally I'm buying about 275 tons. So it shows you the volume difference that we need to be able to sustain our herd. That's extra cost right off the top, even if it was a normal year, which we wouldn't be in the spot if it was a normal year. But cost wise, you can see where that layout changes. So you're almost doubling.
Yeah.
What?
I mean, looking at
Another
it, you're
40%.
at, you increased by 145%.
Yeah. So, well, no, it shouldn't be that much. We normally have a 275 and where I need about 400.
400 divided by 275 is 1.45. So 145%.
Okay. That does make sense. I think it's more like 65 or 55% because you're already more than half. 400,
Yeah.
275 is more than half. So 65%,
Okay.
55%. Anyway, sorry. There's a math lesson for us. You're not a math guy.
No, I'm not. I am not a math guy. I will always tell people that. So
Yeah, it's all right. But the point is, it's a ton more expense. I called the guy, talked to him a little bit, say, hey, I'm looking for a couple 100 ton because we had no hay, zero to this point. Absolutely not. And so,
well,
which
and
means
when did you start? That's the important part because you always start early compared to a lot of other people.
End April, early May.
So you've been on the phone for 2.5 months at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. And personal, talking to people, going and looking at hay, talking to, looking eye to eye to somebody you've dealt with. So he says, oh, yeah, I got some hay for you, I suppose. I said, okay, yeah, I can turn loose of a couple 100 ton. Okay, now we're used to paying for, and we prefer grass hay. I'll take a little bit of mixed with alfalfa in it. We're used to normally doing around, if it's 95 a ton, that's, market price, sometimes as low as 85. It depends. We get mixed, different guys are doing different things. So 85 to $95 a ton in the stack. And then another, because it's fairly close haul, you're looking at last year was $22 a ton to haul it. So you're looking about $400 to haul it on 20 ton or 20, a little over 20 ton, 25 ton a load. And I said, okay, you got a couple 100 ton. I'm thinking, all right, I know it's going to be higher because I know the market's higher. How much? And he said, you can have it in the stack for $350 a ton. And I think, well, when you pencil that, I've already penciled it out. I know where that break even point is. At 350, you're going in the hole. That's foolish to do that. So I said, well, I thank you for your time. And he said, well, you got to understand that cost me more to put it up this year. And I get it. Fuel's more, but fuel isn't from, 100. Let's say he's putting it up for 140 a ton because it's irrigated. He's got water to pay for. He's got pumps to pay for. I get that. If it's 140, now he's jumping, his price up there a little bit more, but he's taking advantage too of a market.
That's where I do have issues with producers that do this because you and I have had this discussion and we'll have it again in a different format, but to just up the price by almost $300 because you're taking advantage of a situation is not right. I understand, like you said, inflation, operating costs, if you have to say, hey, honestly, I know I've always given you 95, but this year it's 160. I'm telling you, it's going to have to be 160. Right. You're going to be like, okay, that's reasonable. I get that. But to go $300 or more, like, come on.
Well,
man.
And some of this hay's, the way they're doing it too, they're selling it, some of them by the bale because it makes it sound better. Yeah. And some of the stuff is $500 a ton. And it's for people who only need, they're looking for 10 ton. Yeah. Or, a 10 is a lot for most people because they're, if you're not in the ag business and you got some hobby horses, you got your pleasure horses, you're looking at a whole lot less. So they're just gouging people, but they don't care. It doesn't matter. And this is what brings me to 2 points. One of them is, he said, well, $350 is like the same as 200 was last year because of inflation. And I said, well, I think that's a little bit much. I said that there is inflation, but you know what? I have seen zero inflation on my cattle when I take them to sale. Fact is, we're making less again.
And that's my point.
Exactly. And you're dead on. And he goes, well, yeah, I suppose. But well, hey, I got another call coming in, so I better go. You know, I
You're
don't
not
want
going
to
to bite, so he's going to move
didn't
on.
want no,
Yeah.
he's on a waste of his time.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, but here's what happened in, and I know this is going in the Wayback Machine, and nobody likes to listen to this crap, but circa 1975 through about 82, 84, the northern part of our state was in exactly the same spot we're in now. It was really, really tough. It was bad. And we knew it, and it was hot here, but at least it wasn't so hot that it was stunning the growth of our hay fields. And we were irrigated. We had that north place, and we were putting up maximum. We were getting about 500 ton of hay put up, which is not a lot. I mean, it is, but it's not. It just, you know, and this is all flood irrigated. This is not pivots. I mean, we worked for it. It was hard. And
How many cuttings a year was that?
that was two.
Two.
That was two on
a good
there
year.
was a one 55 acre spot and a 15 acre spot that was all laser leveled and flood air. Well, those days it wasn't laser leveled. It was just
close enough.
It was, you know, they leveled it with a cat and scraper, and they used a little bubble thing that, you know, I mean, it was crude, but it, you know, it worked. And then the rest of it was flood irrigated for for a single cutting, and that was another couple hundred acres, probably another 100 acres. So two cuttings on that for sure, sometimes a light third on that irrigated alfalfa. But we had surplus hay, and we always had surplus hay. We hayed more than we had cattle for, because we were managing our grass out there too. You know, you don't want to overgraze or you got nothing. So we've talked about that, being sustainable. Grandpa Wayne, Dad's dad, said, he said, boy, there's people up there in the High Line. That's what they, you know, call the northern tier of the state. He said, man, they're really suffering this year. And this started out and it maintained for several years. And he said, we're gonna, you know, we'll sell our hay because we got guys beating on our door, truck drivers brokering the hay and wanting to sell it or wanting to at least haul it, which is, you got to be careful there too, and we'll get into that. But he said, we're going to sell this like it's a normal year. We are not going to gouge people. It's going to, and at that time, guess how much a ton it was that we were selling hay for?
I'm going to guess $30.
$35 a ton.
Nailed it.
Yeah, it was small squares. There was no such thing as big rounds then yet. Yeah. And they were, you know, getting started towards the big rounds that are, you know, towards the late 70s, mid to late 70s. But anyway, regardless, $35 a ton. He says, we are not going to gouge people. He said, these guys are trying to stay in business, and we're going to just treat it like it's a normal year. We're still going to make a little bit more than what we would normally make to cover our expenses. And it just makes our hay a little bit cheaper when you do that, because you're still spending money on it.
Yeah.
It isn't like you're just raising hay and you're selling it all and not consuming. That's not the way it is. So you're making a little bit back in order to pay those expenses down. He said, we will not do that to people. So we supported that area for, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years. And it was tough. I mean, you felt bad for it. He said, we're not putting people out of business. Someday we're going to be in that situation, said he. And we just hope that they return the favor. People in agriculture help each other.
And here's you said you want to talk generational difference.
That's the cultural difference. Yep.
Here's where I would probably do the same thing, but I expect nothing back because I can't trust anybody my age to do the same thing anymore.
You can't trust anybody my age to do the same thing anymore.
Mm-mm.
I was a grandkid at that time.
Yeah.
Right. So, and you're a great grandkid. So things have changed. Times have changed. The margins, I think, they're tight. They're just as tight. We're doing different things, but we didn't put each other out of business. And that's now it's like they don't a lot of these guys don't care. There are a number of people who do, which I'm trying to find those people, and I've talked to some of them, and they're very honest about it. I've got a half a dozen leads back that say, I don't know what I'm going to have. What is it you're comfortable paying? Because he says, I'm going to tell you right now, there's one guy in particular, he says, I've been doing this for 40 some years. I've been selling hay. And he says, I'm not gouging people. I won't gouge people because it isn't the right thing to do. He said, but I've got to be able to make back what I'm doing and pay my bills. I get that. Yeah, it's going to have some impact on that bottom line because of, just as you said, fuel, parts, water. Water is not cheap. People think water's free. It is not cheap.
The other thing too is maintenance. I mean, you got hydraulic, oil,
everything,
regular oil, transmission.
Everything goes up.
Like, oh yeah,
yes,
it's all
everything. Just the cost of your machinery goes up. Everything goes up. That's called inflation, folks. Just what we were talking about, a minute ago, 5.4% on the consumer price index. That's everybody across the board. Now you specialize in some equipment that you can't get parts for just off of a shelf somewhere. You got to go to someplace. It's even worse.
Or fabricate it.
Or fabricate it. Yep. Have a machine shop do it. Now you're paying somebody skilled labor to do that, which, you know what? That's what it's about.
Or the other thing too is like you're doing your own. I've been working before with Grandpa. Hey, this part just went down. I know we can't get this because he was a mechanic. He was well versed enough to know what was available and what wasn't. And he looked at me.
He was a half-ass engineer on.
And he looked at me and my uncle and goes, I need you guys to make this. So we spent an afternoon making a part, welding, grinding, cutting.
It worked.
It got through.
It got through. That's the point. Yeah. So anyway, this guy is very honest with me. I had a couple of them say this. I've had about 5 of them say this to me. Call me back in 10 days. This is about when I'm going to have the rest of the stuff knocked down and start baling it. I'll know what I have. If I've got some extra, I'll see what I can do. They're not promising anything. I would do the same thing because you can't tell somebody, oh yeah, I'm going to have this and not have it. I mean, you just can't do that. So we've got those leads and he says, what is it worth it to you? And I said, look, I'm normally paying average $90 a ton. And I understand where we're at. I understand the need. I understand what the market's doing. And I said, I'm seeing some of this stuff for $400 a ton, up to 500. And I said, you and I both know what's going on with the market. And that high priced hay that somebody's trying to gouge somebody with is actually driving the price of everything else up as well. That's that bubble. It's moving it up. So those that are not trying to gouge somebody, it's driving that market up too. Even CRP hay, which is garbage hay. It's basically stems and leaves of stuff that's not been grazed for years. They're starting to cut that.
That leads me to another point. So kind of wrapping a couple of things up here. We were talking about how everybody was kind of going their own ways of getting leads and stuff. I happened to use Twitter, not on purpose. It just happened to work that way. I don't know how. I fell into that one. Mom was looking through Facebook and like Craigslist and stuff like that. I know you were calling people and getting names of people who to call and numbers, and you're doing it like the old fashioned way. Mom's doing it kind of the semi-regular or the semi-modern way. And then I was in the weirdest way possible using the most modern way of, hey, we need hay. And people were reaching me and saying, hey, you got hay or you need hay? I've got it here, here, and here. But the problem is, again, some people saying, hey, how much do you need? So then I could reach back to that. How much do we need? And they're like, okay, sounds good. And then they're like, well, do you want big squares? I'm like, we don't want them, but if we have to take them, we will.
I'll take them.
But then the other thing too is people were like, hey, I've got rye and I've got wheat stems. I'm like, nope, can't do it. They're like, well, it's just straw. Like that'll be fine. I'm like, yeah, that's good. But straw doesn't keep a cow, like it doesn't keep it nutritionally fed, and they'll lose weight. They'll fill their bellies in the wintertime, but they'll lose weight because there's no nutrition there. And so that's where you're kind of getting to of like, hey, it's stemmy stuff. It's not good nutritional value for the animal.
Well, a lot of the CRP stuff is just that. It's native grass, which is poor. It's not much better. Now, wheat straw, just talking to a friend of ours, and he was talking about that. He's looking for straw as well. He's looking for barley straw and, or oat straw, because wheat straw has zero nutritional value to it. I mean, the barley and the wheat, or the barley and the oat straw a little bit, but you still got to supplement with some kind of a cake, which again, now you're looking at $370 a ton for that.
Yeah. And
feeding 5 pounds a day per animal of that on top of this wheat straw that you got to, or not wheat straw, but straw that you got to get from oats and barley, if you can find it. And I'm seeing that stuff is $150 a ton for malt barley straw. I was like, my God, so what that's causing is a rush, of course, because everybody's starting to panic. I mean, I've been in a panic for 2 months now, and now everybody's doing the same thing, but they're also saying, all right, I can't do this. And that's where I've been looking. I ride through our cattle constantly, both, I got two herds strung out. Well, actually we got three with our replacements, and I'm not so worried about them because I just have to make the decision to sell them or not as a herd. And then I'm looking through our producers, and I'm looking at the cow, I'm looking at the calf, I'm taking into account, first of all, what's that cow look like? What's her age? There's no sense keeping a cow that's 8-9 years old when we're still getting 12 13. One of these cows is 14 years old and producing a decent calf. There's no sense in keeping a cow that's 9 years old still producing a decent calf when I've got cows that are 4 years old producing, have proven
Have
themselves
longer
as producers for
longevity.
2 years, a lot more longevity. But now I'm looking at, okay, what's her feet look like? Was stuff that I would live with before because, like, she's a good producer, she's got a good body build. Now it's like, okay, you got a little bit of a top line that's a little bit peaked, or a little bit of backbone showing through more than normal. You're not quite as thick through the flank. I mean, anything that we have to cull these cattle is fair game. And I'm looking at them and their calf, what they're producing. So, I mean, it's tough. It's not easy. And up until just a couple of days ago, we were able to secure 200 ton of hay. So now I don't have to liquidate the herd. Allegedly.
Necessarily, yeah.
Yeah, because the hay is in Nebraska. That's how far we're having to reach out. And you found places in Texas. I found some in Idaho.
So
and I'm still waiting on some from Idaho too.
The furthest offer I had was South Carolina.
That's a long, long way.
And that was the thing. I had South Carolina. I think I had Alabama, several Missouri, Mississippi, I think. I definitely had Illinois and Minnesota. And then the Dakotas were out. Nobody there. There was one or two guys.
Shape we're in.
Yeah, there was one or two guys from South Dakota, but they're like, "Hey, it's going to cost you a lot. I'm telling you up front, it's going to cost you a lot to haul." I'm like, "I know."
Right.
So, but like, there's a lot of the eastern part of the U.S. that they were open to helping us haul. But again, I told him, I was like, I appreciate the offer, but you're too far. We can't manage that. And then again, I had a bunch from Northwest and South Texas that were offered. And I was like, we can't do that, guys. I know what the hauling is going to cost coming from your area. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, you've got the cost of the hay as one, and that's good. I mean, that's fine. And that, man, I appreciate those people getting back to us.
Yeah.
Then it's a matter, okay, we got the hay, we can buy it for this. What's it going to cost to get here? Now you're up there, $350, $400 a ton. It doesn't pencil out.
When I know what the fuel prices are, and then I know the distances, because I've driven to Texas more than once from Montana. I know how long that trek is. There's no way that I can justify that. No. So it's like, that's an easy, I kind of have a ring in my head of where the radius is. And Nebraska was a little far. I was surprised that you went that far, but I mean, if it works out, it works out, hopefully.
Yeah. And how that's gone, it isn't double what we're normally getting. We are at $275 a ton delivered. So it's $175 in the stack. And they're big square bales. I don't care. I can feed a big square bale. It's going to be a royal pain, but you know what? At least these cows can eat. At least we can keep them alive, and we can keep them home. So $175 a ton to buy it. And this is from a guy I didn't even know existed, right? So here's some of the leap of faith you have to do and have in some of the people that you work with. And then a solid $100 a ton to haul it. So that's where our 275 comes in. And you know what? A guy running his truck, it's not cheap. He's not making a ton of money on that. He is making some money, but he's in business.
Well, and again, I don't hold the truckers to any remorse. Yeah, there's absolutely no ill will to them, because again, we know the distance, we know it's going to be heavy hauling, and we know what that is. Now, if there's a trucker he's skiving off people, that's different, but That's few and far between. But
right.
for the
And
most
this is a
part,
guy.
I don't blame the truckers. It's the
No.
hay producer that we have to deal with to try and get the price down.
Well, and here's the difference between, and I said we'd come to this, a broker who's a trucker and a trucker. Now this guy we I started using him last year and really like him. And what he does, and he was upfront with it last year, he goes, I don't care where you get the hay. He says, if you get the hay, I'll go haul it. If I find the hay for you, and he has a lot of hay producers that he writes down what they've got and who he'll sell to. And he says, I don't make any money on the hay. I don't want to make money on the hay. I will make money on the trucking part of it.
Yeah, that's smart.
Doesn't matter to me whether you find it or not. He says, all I will ask is that you go my going rate for running that truck down the road. And he's doing that. And his fee, in these close hauls like this, where it's really, he wouldn't make any money by the mile. He charged $22 a ton last year. Okay, I'm all right with that. I mean, it's still that much. And he's hauling about 25 ton or 30 ton at a time. Now, for this long haul, he can't do that. He has to go by the mile. And you're talking $5.50 a mile, a loaded mile. So it's, you're paying for not the round trip. It's always a loaded mile. So, you know what? He blows 2 tires. That cuts into that, and he has to account for that. So how this will work is he knows the guy in Nebraska. I don't. He's the guy who made contact with him. And that's why I've been in contact with his driver too. We've had numerous texts and several phone calls, and he's sick of talking to me probably, but it's getting so desperate that I was almost ready to pull a trigger on $350 a ton hay and see if I could get it hauled here at the $22 a ton, which is relatively, it's fair. And when I talked to him, he says, hey, I've got some hay, but I asked him first, I said, what are you finding for some hay? And he goes, it's expensive. He said, man, he says, it's tough. And he goes, you know what? He says, I need this hay to be cheaper, because if it's not for guys like you, I don't have a business. You guys have to stay in business so I can stay in business.
I mean,
and
there's a trickle.
That's the big picture, right?
That's the trickle down that I didn't even think of, because yep. I mean, you think about it and you completely, you come aware with that right away, because without us, he doesn't have a business. Who's he going to haul to? Nobody. All that's going to happen is that hay's going to end up stacking somewhere. And that, again, round circle, bringing it all the way back in a circle. That's where I also get upset with hay producers when they do increase exorbitantly, because they're not just trying to take advantage of a situation, but they're potentially knocking out 2 businesses at once too. Because now not only am I making a livestock business say, all right, we're out, we're done, and they liquidate, but now that trucker no longer has a customer to haul to.
Right. And we've had these issues before where, it's thin here and there, and people, they tighten their belt and they just go, okay, I'm gonna have to sell a bunch of cows. Or the truck driver goes, man, I have to do something here a little different, haul something that I had never planned on hauling before, working for somebody. I mean, that always happens, because again, it's a cyclic. This does happen. I don't think I've ever seen it this bad. We didn't have the rain early. We're in a country that's 15 inches of precip a year on normal, and we're 4 inches behind. 4 inches. So we just haven't had the moisture. So with him doing what he's doing, going through him like this, you have to have a little bit of trust. Now the deal is, he's going to go to Nebraska and pick up this hay that's second cutting. Normally we like first cutting because it's got a little bit more protein in it, higher protein content. It's easier for them to chew. It's smaller stemmed. It's a little more palatable that way, but you don't get quite as much for it nutritionally, generally. But he's going to go down there, pick this up, because he's learned about this guy from a contact he has. And then he contacted the guy, and he says, yeah, I've got 400 ton. I'll hold 200 ton for you. We're stretching out there with 200 ton, depending on how it goes. We might be able to save half the herd. The other half may have to go. I yet to be determined. So 50%, you know, and your mother, you said 15 years. We've been actually working on this longer. It wasn't, but just a couple of years after we were married, almost 30 years ago, we started with 2 cows. We bought 2 cows and used your grandpa's bull. And we've built up since then. There's been some years we couldn't save, you know, replacements, or we had catastrophes happen. You have to sell some off. I mean, that has happened
Or tragedy.
back and forth. Yeah. So that goes on, but we spent all of this time, almost our entire married life, trying to build a little herd for ourselves, all to see it gone within a matter of months. And you know what? In May, first part of May, when we were calving, things were looking good. We were hoping for the first time to be able to make a small profit this year, after all this time. And so you see where we're at. You know, it just makes you sick. But we're going to keep going. We'll do what we need to do. If we have to liquidate the entire herd, we do. But here's the strategy. And everybody else has got the same strategy, because you can't have this many people in the same spot not thinking the same way. And they are, because we all talk.
Well,
and that is,
and to give context to anybody who's listening, right now, those who can't afford it or they don't have the water to support are liquidating portions of their herds. Some of them are liquidating their entire herd, but most are only doing portions. And a lot of those are going to be what you call broken mouth cows. So they're going to be their older cows that likely won't produce many calves, much more calves, or any at all. So they're saying,
at least smooth mouth.
We'll cut our losses. We'll get rid of the older ones and we'll work with that. The problem is there's
which you do anyway. You normally do that anyway. Yeah.
But there's more right now because of the situation. So there's an influx of animals into the market. And what's happening, much like the stock market crash of 29, people running to the bank to pull their money out. Everybody's going in to sell their cows, and it's flooding the market, and it's making the value even less. And so as more people put more and more cows into that situation because they can't do anything, the cost of the beef goes lower and lower and lower and lower for us.
For the producer, yeah.
But then when it goes back to the meat packers, it gets inflated, and we have those conversations constantly. But that's the problem is at the starting level, we continue to lose money because that's the situation and the context in which we stand.
Well, and you got 2 different things that are going to affect the market on that end as well. You've got your feeders who are trying to fatten these cattle up to go to slaughter, and some of these older cows and stuff, they're just going to go straight to slaughter. They're hamburger.
Yeah.
You know, so
there's not going to be a good steak on them just because of the situation or the condition which their body's in.
Right, and that's part of that's just the way the food chain is, and how it is in the usability of that animal. You know, they have produced good animals for your high quality meats for a number of years, and then you know they don't have high quality in them. They are you know, a tough old bird is what they really are. So they go for your filler for your hamburger. And this country makes a lot of hamburger and consumes a lot of hamburger because of that. So when you have all of this influx of animals going to a feeder or a slaughter plant, they can only do so much in production. Pretty soon the buyers are going to go, nope, we can't buy anything. We're halting, or we're pulling back. Okay, now what do you do with those animals? They're standing there with nothing to eat, and you can't get them anything to eat. It doesn't matter whether it's $1,000 a ton. If you can't get that to them, they're going to die. So this happens all over the place, and not quite as bad. I think the whole western third of the U.S. is basically in a drought condition, some of it very extreme. Yeah. So you've got that end of it as well, and you can't blame a feeder for not taking animals that they too cannot get hay for, or silage, or corn, or whatever it is that they're feeding on their program. And usually corn, but still it's the same thing. And we've talked about those commodities markets and how that affects the market as well. But if you can't feed them, you can't keep them. And that's the same where we're at. If I couldn't find this hay, and I found it, he's going to haul it, but it won't be here until after the 1st of August. Hopefully. That doesn't mean just because we've made a deal and a kind of a handshake thing, that there's no guarantee that he gets down there with his truck. And I have a check for that man personally to him for 50% of this load before we ever start hauling it. I have to give him 50% down. So we're looking at 200 ton costing $55,000. Where normally we're down there in the range of $30,000.
And you had to put what down? 27,500?
No, well, 17.5 for 50% to the producer, to the hay producer.
Yeah.
And then that first load, I got to pay this truck driver. And he said, he works with you. He goes, yeah, that first load or every other load, I'm okay with that. And I was like, you know what? I don't like people operating for me on their money.
Yeah.
Even though he set up to it, I don't mind giving them. That's why normally I give the hay producers here, I'll cut him a check for 10 grand when we shake hands on how many ton of hay we think we're going to get. And I'm okay with that. Last year, he couldn't quite get us exactly what we wanted. There was about 10 tons short, but you know what? He can't make it up. He can't just out of thin air find this hay that he can't have. But at least I covered some expenses to begin with, and a good faith deal where he's operating on my money that he's going to operate on anyway, whether it's early or late. So I don't mind paying these guys ahead of time. The risk is we're paying a man several states away 50% down on something before we ever even see it or start hauling it. And then on the last truckload out, there's the other 50%. So,
well, and you don't know this guy personally either. You don't have this rapport. You've just reached him and talked to him over the phone and on email and text, whatever.
Actually, the truck driver has
the truck driver. So it's not even you. So
No.
there's a big leap of faith right now, all based off of trying to keep a herd alive.
Yep. And the part of that is the first 50% down. Hopefully I get that 200 ton. After we've hauled half of it, now we're even. The second half, now he's making a leap of faith that I get that other half of that hay in there. Am I actually going to pay him for that? So there's risk on both ends of that. And that kind of keeps us both, honest with each other, which, I'm okay. And I told the driver, I said, you know what, I'm okay, paying for all of it up front, as long as we can get it. He goes, oh God, don't do that, and you don't want to, but I would pay him that because I know he can operate with that and he would only dole it out. Yeah. But that's my good faith to him as well, which isn't smart, but it's just kind of the way I like to operate. I want people to trust me. Yeah. So anyway, that's where we're at right now. We got 200 ton. We'll be able to save half of the herd. Half. We may not be able to save any of the replacement heifers. I mean, that's yet to be determined. We'll see where it goes, but I'm working our training horses early in the morning, and it gets hot. I'm checking water, riding through these cows, and then the rest of the day it's been so hot. I'm on the phone, and it doesn't matter really what's going on outside. I got to be on that phone contacting people and talking to them, or going and seeing them, trying to get some hay.
There's a lot more. I think this is kind of an important part too, is that people think it's just every year you just take a cow or a calf, you take care of it, make sure it's got water and some grass in front of it, and then at the end of the year all you do is you just send them to the ring, and then that's
nothing
it.
But profit, baby.
You get your money.
Nothing but profit. It's all free. Yeah.
I would hope that something like this at least shows, just with this situation, because there's various seasons within agriculture. There's let's start from the beginning of the year. There's feeding, trying to get out of winter and into spring. While you're feeding, then you're going to start calving. While you're calving, you're looking forward to, okay, now I'm going to have to make sure that there's delouse for the animals, wormer, stuff like that. Then you're okay, now it's branding time. Now we got to make sure everybody gets to the right pasture because we're trying to separate the herds.
You're sticking vaccines in each one of them.
Vaccinations, yeah. What you're doing is you're managing where the herds go, how the land's going to be done and taken care of, and what bulls are going with what herds, because you don't want to mess up the genetics. Then you get to summertime and you're trying to acquire hay for winter. And winter, it's funny because winter is comes from the Game of Thrones series, but man, is it accurate, because every time we hit May, June, we're like, hey, winter's coming, we got to start looking for hay.
Right.
Because then that's when the thing happens. And then we acquire the hay, or hopefully acquire the hay, start stacking it, getting it prepped, and then you go right into, okay, now we got to make sure to do vaccinations again and weaning.
Precondition. Yep.
and precondition those animals, and then you send them to the ring, and you hope you make the best out of it, and then you feed for the rest of the winter, and then you start back over.
And that preconditioning is really a booster shot on what you gave them earlier, so that they're healthy going into a feedlot, so that the feeders can take them and just start putting them right on feed, and don't have to worry about some of these diseases that can pick up, and dust pneumonia, all kinds of stuff that you're preparing them for. But your point is, it just keeps going, but you're looking ahead, and I'm always looking ahead 9 to 10 months.
Well, I was gonna say in the math, you and I have been throwing out a lot of numbers. How many cuttings? How many ton? How much per ton? How much per haul? What's per mile? What
How
can
much
we
to feed
afford? How
per
much?
animal per day?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a math guy, but I can get through math because this is how I grew up. Is okay. Now you got to start crunching numbers. How much is the horse going to cost? How much is the cow and the calf pair going to cost? How much is it going to cost to hold on to heifers for 2 years before they even breed? How much is we just got a bull that broke himself. Now we got to go acquire another bull. There's a loop for you that happened last year. How all these
happens.
different things that you got to have. Not really, there's no such thing as really a slush fund, but there's okay, where can we pull money from here and there?
What you're doing is you're shorting something else. You're pulling it out of one pocket that's meant for something to put it in something else. Okay, well, we're not going to be able to fix that mile of fence this year.
Yeah, or I mean, in your case, because now that you're back to training horses more regularly, well, all right, now I got to either sell a horse or train 3 in order to buy a brand new bull.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, train a bunch of horses up and spend 90 days to pull out some product for some people that you didn't plan on doing, that takes time to do, but you haven't got it. That's your alternative. Yeah. So it's it's what it is. It's no different than any other business having to do the same thing on a small business scale. You just don't have that margin to deal with. So I mean, and it's not a complaint. I hope people understand that it's not a complaint. This is more of an educational thing. Let people know this is what happens. This is
reality.
This is reality. This is how fast you can go out of business. It's tough enough on a good year, and I was talking to a guy who produces hay, and I'm going to get back to him in. Well, actually, he's going to get back to me, because he's like, and this is why I like talking to people instead of over the internet. Internet is impersonal. The telephone is enough impersonal. I don't care for it, but that's what I'm used to. I'm used to looking a guy in the eye.
Here's the other thing too. This is the generational thing. 1, I'm used to that. 2, my personality is very much business. I'm here for business unless you want pleasure. Oh, you want to be my friend. You want to get to know me. I want to get to know you. Okay, that's cool. But for the most part, it's okay. Here's the deal. Here's what I need. What do you need? Okay. Right. That's not going to work for me. Where can we meet in the middle? Okay, good. Deal done. That's it. I'm not there for pleasantries. And I don't know if this is more the technology. Yeah, maybe it's the technology, but maybe it's my time in the military. I am very straightforward, and I have very little time to get to know you. I am there for a purpose and to get something done, and that's it. I want to move on.
Well, and I think that is very indicative of our technological age.
Yeah.
Because and it's not so much that we're going to be buddies. It's what, if I have a rapport with you and you have a good product for me and my money is good with you and I pay my bill immediately, maybe we're going to have a business relationship into the future.
Right.
And that's where I look at that. And so I am used to looking a guy in the eye, talking to him, explaining, well, this is how we do. And you know what? I can learn something from that guy. You don't know what you're going to pick up from him. And I'm talking to this gentleman out of Idaho, actually a friend of yours. Here's where we're networking. We got friends of ours that are not in agriculture. They've been there with our brandings. They've been, they've grown up around us, and they're like, oh my God, we got to find them some hay. We got to help. Yeah. And they're doing their best.
Snapchats, Facebook Messenger, Instagram. Hey, I saw this. Check it out. All right, thanks, man. Yep. I pushed it to you. And
Yep. And so I talked to this guy, and they've got a pretty good sized operation in Idaho. And he says, what are you looking for hay? And I said, any damn thing I can stick in a cow's gut to keep them alive and keep them home.
Yeah.
and we're talking a little bit, and he goes, well, this is what kind of hay I got. And he had a variety of different hays. And I was like, that's awesome. That's good for you. And it's all irrigated. It's all under pivot. And he said, what do you guys do? How are you doing this? And I said, well, we're all dry land. I said, we have no ability to put up hay at this point, and a pivot in the future. We'll see. We'll have to see. We have to change some things to do that. And it would drastically change. And believe me, some of these hot days, I'm sitting there thinking about that too, and starting to put a pencil to it. And you talk about crunching numbers. It's just called penciling it out. Is that pencil going to work? Is it sharp enough to make it work?
But it's, I mean, I'm early in my work towards an MBA. And for anybody who doesn't know what that acronym is, because I didn't for the longest time, it's a master's in business administration.
You want fries with that?
Yeah. So business administration, just knowing how to operate a business and try and make sure that it gets to a successful end state, essentially. A lot of the things I learned in my very early introductory class was the importance of diversification. Well, we all know the importance of diversification with finances and anything else. Why wouldn't it make sense with a business? Obviously, that it kind of hit me like square in between the eyes with the hammer. I'm like, well, duh. So we're also looking at things like diversification. This YouTube channel, for example, is a form of diversification. Right now, we're doing it for free, but in hopes that someday we can get some monetization in order to help educate people and share our life, and also make a little bit of money on the side to help with the income.
But the educational part of it is, for me, is what's most important, because you see the picture on what you can make on it. It's like, okay, yeah, whatever. But it's educational portion of people need to understand where their food comes from. That is important. So we are sustained. That's the whole point, where I'm at with it. And I know it's this generational, but back to talking to this guy, and he said, how much do you need? And I told him, and I said, look, we're all dry land. We got no hay, and this is what we have, because we have to graze what we can, because we can't depend on Mother Nature. And this year, if we had a lot less cows, still wouldn't mean we didn't need to buy hay. And he goes, so your cow calf operation? I go, yep, strictly cow calf and dry land. And he goes, man, he says, you guys are trying to make it the toughest way possible. And I go, we know, but again, it's our horses. It's our other talents, teaching clinics. Your mother, she's a school marm, teaching science classes in high school. I mean, you diversify, and everything you do goes into that. So he's like, man, I'll help you out. He says, I'll see what I can do. So there's a contact, and he's like, he's sympathetic to what we do, because he's also in that and understands. And you know what? He's like the truck driver. If I can't sell my hay, what am I going to do with it?
Yeah. There is a trickle down effect all the way across the agricultural industry.
And
if
one
sector dies, well, that's the thing. It's like, what happens, going back to my opening comments, we got about 7 minutes left. What happens when we only have those 4 producers?
Yeah.
Well, all the hay producers are out. What are they going to do with their land? Nothing.
Or scale it back to where they can't hang on to it, because it's all about volume of production.
Yeah.
The more you produce, the more you stretch that margin wider. So when you take a hit on something else, some guy is let's say he's cutting hay with a swather, and all of a sudden a bearing starts to go, and it heats up to the point, and this happens, that all of a sudden it starts a fire, and you got a fire on your swather, and you can't get it put out, and you burn up a brand new swather at the cost of, I don't know how much, depends on this size of the head, or depends on a lot of things. That's a hit.
Yep.
And it can happen within a few minutes. So it's about being able to sustain, and we've talked about sustainability, but we also got to have some profitability with that sustainability. You can't just keep sustaining stuff and not make any money, because you will go under. And those guys who are selling this stuff for, well, your $300 or my $350 hay is like buying it for $200 last year. And that's the guy that, people remember that. And I'm certainly going to remember that.
Oh yeah. When he's begging for somebody to come buy his hay,
he's the last resort.
I can find it elsewhere.
Well, I can't buy it. You can't pay for it. You have to sell cows before you can do that. And he knows that people are over a barrel, and some people will pay for it. There will be some that have to. Some of the stockyards can't even find hay, and they have to feed animals that are brought in overnight to a, you know, a lesser degree, but they put enough in them that they just need to keep them tided over. Because if animals lose weight on their property, when they go through the ring, they lose money too on weight when you have weigh ups.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's ugly. It's bad. I don't like where the culture has gone. I understand it. But I don't understand putting people out of business so that I could really do well. I understand
I think
making
it's
a little bit of profit to pay my bills and to be able to have a margin that I can operate on in case there's a hit, like we just talked about. But I don't understand, and maybe I'm wrong. I just think there's a certain morality that comes into this business, that you help each other, and that is something everybody used to do. The only thing that does that now is somebody gets a fire on their place and most people will come help put it out.
Yeah. The only difference is, and I think this might be a cultural thing too, because I'm finding it more and more as I travel across the nation. I'm also I think a large portion of it is American, in the sense that we don't look at the bigger picture. We look very much at ourselves. And when you don't, in a selfish manner, if you were to look at the bigger picture and understand that this could affect you in a couple of years down the road, versus, oh, I can make a killing now, but they don't understand the repercussions that can come from that over the next 3 to 5 years. I think if people kind of took their blinders off and opened up their perspective a little bit, it would go a long ways as well. But yes, I do agree with the morality part. I think there's a lot of people that need to improve in that specific sector of their life.
Well, we've become more business-like in our thought process.
Yeah.
Instead of business-like from a sustainability perspective with others. I mean, I'm not in competition with everybody else. I am in a way, but I don't want them to go out of business. I want competition, you know, because that makes us better.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have people who are short-sighted, and I call it looking at the lower right-hand box of that spreadsheet, when that's all they see, they will screw people. They are unscrupulous. There are always going to be those people. Always have been, and there always will be. But you hope that a little bit of karma comes around, and you know, that they have just as low a low as that high that they were riding when they're at other people's expense. And I just don't understand putting each other out of business when there's really no need for it, and you can still survive and still live. Maybe that's idealistic of me, and I know it sounds self-serving because we're on the other end of that now. But you know what? We have lived that, where we didn't gouge people.
That's the thing, is we've lived the other side of the you know, the road, I guess, but the other side of the river, whatever it is. But you know, I guess the thing that kind of close with is, what is going to be the realistic probably outcome this year for the herd? Are we going to what you said, half probably? Do you think you're going to be able to keep more than that? What do you think is going to, you think just half?
Half. I think we can keep half for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think half for sure. You know, and it took us to go from where we're at, and that's, you know, the growth becomes logarithmic after a while. It's a numbers game. It took your mother and I probably 6 years to go from 50 to 100 head. You know, I mean, that's a lot of, when you start getting my age, you know, I'm pushing 60. I know I only look 29, but I'm pushing 60, and I don't have that many 5-year spans left, 6-year spans left to rebuild. I don't have it. You know, physically, I ain't gonna last forever. Hell, I'm getting on horses and I'm doubting whether I should be on them sometimes. You know, we age, and you get tired and you get wore out, and then the mental wear, I think, affects your body more than anything. You try to keep a positive attitude, and notoriously, I'm being told, that's negative. Well, I have to be a realist. I have to look at what is going on around you and prepare for it. And yeah, that sounds negative, but if you don't, you know what? The lion eats you.
Yeah, I agree.
So with that, we can't pay for hay. And the only way we can pay for you is to thank you today for watching in, and until you're better paid.